And here we are on Tuesday, May 15th. We're broadcasting live from the Nevada County Tech and Innovation Center in beautiful Nevada City. And we have the pleasure and honor to be speaking with Austin Bennett, who's running for Senate in District 6. So welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm very happy to be here, Mike, and thanks for having me. And so, yeah, I'm running for the State Senate in District 6, which is really the heart of Sacramento and some of the surrounding areas. There's the population that's about 1 million. We've got about 500,000 registered voters. And I decided to run because of the direction that this state is going in and my concern for my children's future. And so my situation, as I've mentioned often, has been fine. My wife and I live in the first house we bought. It was just my wife and me, and 5 children later. And I've got an office, been in the same area for about 17 years, and enjoy my drive back and keep my date nights with my wife, family time with children. And so there's really nothing in terms of wealth that I felt that I could achieve more. My wealth is in my family, but I've watched the continual erosion of this state and representatives who claim to represent us, but they're not speaking on issues that are so critically important to bring out to the open. And often these are considered to be politically incorrect to discuss, or there's elephants in the room you just don't mention. And so I decided I would throw my hat into the ring, and I would be a voice for the people. I would run on a platform of transparency and speak on things that mattered most for the people. And you know, on the issues, I hadn't decided exactly what issues I would focus on for my platform, and it kind of evolved because as I started to run, things were becoming more apparent to me, and even meeting certain activist groups, and I started to learn more. And we had a situation that truly, it's a crisis. And you know, really to sum it up, I just don't think that there's anything more important when we're discussing issues than our health. Because without our health, then nothing else matters.
So as you're creating your platform and your campaign, I know that you probably have come up against opposition to some of your ideas and insights, but what are some of the main points of your platform and campaign dealing with health and in Sacramento County? Right.
Well, one of the first groups I met was the group that was exposing really the dangers of vaccines. And I went to the Capitol. I met with a senator at the Capitol and to discuss my candidacy and support from the party, or the endorsement, and I met a group, and that's where it all began for me. And I realized, I mean, these people were getting information out that was so critically important. And one of the questions that came out, because my wife and I chose to homeschool our children. My wife, who's a physical therapist, we just decided during that time she had the opportunity to stay home and homeschool, and we had made a decision not to vaccinate our children. And so that kind of opened up opportunity for dialogue with this group. And one of the things that they brought up, as they were inquiring of me, because they knew I was a candidate for the state senate, was about vaccinating my children if I had. And then I remember another question being thrown out, well, do you think all vaccines are bad? Well, I hadn't researched it so in depthly. All I knew is per studies, we chose not to vaccinate our children. And someone asked me, well, what do you think? Do you think that any vaccination or any inoculation is a good thing to do? And I said, well, maybe tetanus, as an example. And that turned out to be the wrong answer also. And so when I started to research the industry, I was totally, I mean, I was floored. I mean, the idea that, you know, I'm 53 now, that I had about 12 vaccinations growing up, so about 12 vaccines. Now they want children to have 50 and more than 70, and they're even increasing that now. And so the more I focused in on what was going on with pharma in vaccines, that was such a total awakening for me, because I realized that our children were being harmed. And I eventually had the opportunity to speak at Houston. It was the Global Vaccine Summit protest, and met mothers there, it was an amazing experience, whose children were injured from vaccines. And then when I realized it was more prevalent than I ever had noticed before, and just as an example, you know, I was speaking to my neighbor, my next door neighbor. I'm not talking about across the street, right next door, and speaking to the mother about, you know, the platform and some of the things that I was learning. And she told me that when her 3-year-old daughter was vaccinated, that she had lost her personality and developed autism. And so the more I researched, as I said, the more I realized that the people are being assaulted.
So, of course, vaccinations, and there's a lot of documentaries out, including Vax, that bring some of the information and scientific research to the surface. But in other areas of health, for adults and for agriculture, what are some of the other things you found as you've been mounting your campaign?
Right, and I'll touch on that, but just since you mentioned Vax, I have to share that when the Vax team, I actually got interviewed by the Vax team, and that really opened up a lot of opportunity for me, got me a lot of exposure, and I appreciated what they're doing. And so, you know, some of the things that I've been open about anyway, even using social media, the only thing I've really used social media for the last 8 years when my wife signed me up was to disseminate truth, because I saw the things that were going on with the federal government, really the overreach, and just a lot of things that were taking place. And even with chemtrails, you know, recognizing the idea that our skies were being sprayed with substances that were dangerous and detrimental to our health. And, you know, it was like one thing led to another, and I started to research more and think about more. I want to go back on you know, the vaccines when they really started to discuss the idea about mercury. I remember studying, you know, seeing a documentary years ago about the idea that mercury being in our body at all is so harmful. And so having mercury put in our teeth, that even before I ran, I had all the mercury removed from my teeth. And so to elaborate, so that opened up the door with Monsanto, which I've been critical about before. You know, my wife's famous salsa that she makes, the key ingredient is just tomatoes that are organic and normal and that are full of flavor. And so those became my platform, because I realized that, for example, that Monsanto, which has been stealing our seeds, I knew about before I started running more than 2 years ago, that Monsanto is bullying our organic farmers, and not only bullying our organic farmers, but actually fraudulently taking them to court and winning in court and getting farmers out of business and coercing many farmers to actually basically get in bed with Monsanto and start selling their seeds so they can continue to have a livelihood. And so even studying the area of genetically modified organisms, I came to learn that not only are they not healthy, but they are actually detrimental to our health. These seeds are toxic to our systems. And so I couldn't help but start talking about Monsanto. I mean, they're controlling about 80%, from what I understand, and it looks very compelling, 80% of our grocery industry. And so I started to discuss Monsanto and started to expose the dangers of GMOs, and really to be a voice for farmers and talk about, as a state senator, that I would create incentives for organic farmers to grow responsibly, to take care of the soil, and to even use tax incentives, because really organic farmers are the health, you know, of this nation. And so that, of course, led me to the idea as I'm researching more. You know, we grew up with the idea that fluoride was good to be in our drinking water because it was good for our teeth. Well, that's an absolute lie. And the more things that opened up, you know, the more aware I became of how we as a people have been lied to. And I worked previously, a little more than 20 years ago, I worked as a reporter for an NBC affiliate. And even then, you know, I remember that we were very much obligated to our sponsors. And so at times, you know, we were expected to take sound bites out of context and slant stories, and that's just a reality. And this was more than 20 years ago, and it's why I left the industry. And so Mike, so the answer here is the things that are impacting our health, because right now with what I see that's being sprayed in the sky, you know, I was looking at a Preservation Act that was written in 2001 that referred to chemtrails. And yet now what I've discovered with opposition is they're trying to convince the people to quit using that term, and now steering the people to the term geoengineering, which connotes that there's some good purpose for spraying our skies with these dangerous toxic metals, aluminum, barium. Now they're discovering that there's even lithium in it, and believe it or not, my 10-year-old son, I don't even ever remember using this term with him, but yesterday he was talking about it, and he said, "Dad, you know, they're putting lithium," I've said to placate society, but my 10-year-old son said it's to make society docile. You know, I was so impressed by him. The idea is that we're truly under assault. That comment is not inflammatory. That statement is not inflammatory, but it is the truth. And so, as someone who's seeking to represent the people, there's nothing that's more important that we stop this assault against our health. You know, some people have told me, "Well, you know, Austin, quit bringing those things up right now, because if you bring those things up right now, people are going to think that you're crazy, so wait until you get into the government." Well, let me tell you what would happen if that was the strategy that I took. That when a representative gets into office without the support of the people, that the people don't recognize that we are under assault and that their representative is speaking the truth, then that representative is going to be ineffective. Because I've spoken about chemtrails to a number of people. I specifically spoke about chemtrails to one of the senators, and when I brought up the idea that I would speak about controversial topics, and the senator asked me, we were meeting outside, and he said, "So what are you going to talk about? What controversial topic are you going to talk about?" And I said, "For example, chemtrail." And the senator said, "I don't know what that is, so it's not important." And so that's the situation that we have right now, is that we have representatives right now who are feigning that they don't know what certain things are, because they are being coerced, they are being conditioned, or they're being bought to keep their mouths closed. So again, if the people are not rising up behind the representative, then the representative. So I felt that I needed to reach that critical mass, that there's an awakening with the people, because when the people wake up, I will come into the government with a big stick, and that big stick is going to be the people who are standing behind me. And I've said it before, and I'm unabashed about saying it, that when there is a vote in the Senate, when there is a vote in the Senate, that it would be very effective if there was gallows that were lined up outside, because if our representatives recognize that the people are not going to tolerate treason, then they will stop turning their backs on the people and turn their backs on special interests if they feel that kind of pressure. Otherwise, we're going to continue to go down the road that we're going in today.
Great. So you spoke a little bit about chemtrails and also how the difference between chemtrail verbiage and geoengineering. We spoke a little bit about the fluoride, and we also spoke about vaccinations. And could you talk a little bit, because I know one of the big things that affect us up here in this area is the use of petroleum-based or industrial agriculture. And it's very easy, without looking too far, if you go south of Sacramento, the whole Central Valley is basically a drought-stricken, toxic wasteland of industrial agriculture. Fortunately, Sacramento and north of the Delta still has some level of pristineness to the environment. But can you talk about your feelings about the use of some of these more nefarious types of weed killers and pesticides that are being used on our agriculture?
Right. Once again, this wonderful corporation that's plagued the world, Monsanto, I'm absolutely against using anything that is harmful to our health. It doesn't make sense. You know, taking shortcuts for the idea for profit is unacceptable. You know, we have to protect our earth, we have to protect our health, we have to protect our systems. And so I oppose anything in terms of those things that are being used. I can tell you that when we shop, that we specifically are shopping organic, and also, but even knowing that we're shopping organic, that we're concerned about some of the things that are coming down on it. So I know that's kind of a long answer, Mike, but I can tell you that for my family, that we do everything possible to avoid getting poisons into our body. Let me, if I can just really, is that right? And you know, when you would taste, you know, the stuff that he was growing, it was amazing. You know, the watermelons that they had there, I mean, they had all kinds of agriculture that was there. And the thing that he shared is it was very difficult to sell, because the you know, people don't want to spend more for organic products. Growing organic is more difficult because now you've got bugs and things like that that can get into your vegetables. So I witnessed it through him that it was much more challenging, and so it has to be through information and education, that once people recognize that it's more expensive to eat unhealthy, that they'll be more willing to spend a little bit more to support organic farmers. But I also feel that our government should be creating incentives for organic farmers to potentially even to subsidize, to help them grow organic foods for the citizens, for we the people. Otherwise, you know, we're going to continue to see that. If people are willing to spend less and not complain about getting pesticides in their food, then we're not going to see change. So people need to recognize how toxic and how harmful this stuff is. That's why you see this increase with cancer, and we have an unhealthy population now. And so to answer that question a long way, pesticides, you know, that are harmful to our health have no business being in agriculture.
And one of the interesting things, I'm currently taking a practical permaculture class. And contrary actually to popular belief, we're actually finding that organic agriculture can be far less expensive because you're not using a lot of the chemical-based nutrients. We're not supporting the petroleum industry, and that it just takes simple understanding of the technologies of things like compost, things like mulching. And what they found out in the last couple of years is that actually organic farming, when done correctly, is a great way to also do carbon farming from the environment. So I wanted to add that because, again, you can look up permaculture online. There's a great organization I work with called Practical Permaculture in Rough and Ready, California, with Cathay Fish. But she's been traveling the world for almost 40 years teaching about permaculture. And there's a lot of very simple solutions. But like you said, people need to be educated.
Right.
And like your platform has pointed out, and this is why I'm so passionate about helping to support you, because the cornerstone of your platform is really about the basic right of health.
Yes.
And the quality of life.
Right. And permaculture, I've never even heard of it, but that sounds awesome.
It's amazing. They're actually doing things they're doing desert reforestation, and they're also realizing now that through nutrient-rich soil and different types of topsoilings and different types of creating infrastructure that we can do carbon farming to actually pull carbon out of the environment. And not only that, but the whole politicizing of water and the drought consciousness in California is really based on a farce of water use mismanagement and how the dams have actually had an extremely detrimental effect on the Central Valley, which used to be a wetlands, which used to have lots of wildlife, which used to be very fertile, and with the introduction of industrial and petroleum-based agriculture and chemical agriculture, you can see when you drive down Route 5, I mean, they can barely sustain cattle out there at this point. So, you know, there's really living examples of how people can see this truth. And I'm not trying to politicize this. We're just trying to give people the information. And that's one of the things I love about your campaign. Although these things can be politicized, because everything these days is politicized, from religion to food to whatever it might be. But the fact that you're running on a platform that really puts quality of life and health first and children first is extremely innovative and forward thinking for the traditional political model. So in my eyes, you're one of the people at the forefront of what's happening on the grassroots level with millions of people across the country and around the world, and you're representing those people. So I want to thank and congratulate you for your research, your education, your innovation, and the time and effort that you're committing to wear this hat, to get engaged in the political system, to make some real change. Because I think real change is going to have to be the grassroots movement meeting the political representatives and actually finding sane alternatives, because what we're doing right now is not working.
Right, absolutely. And I'm so impressed by you. And see, this is the thing, is representing the people and being a representative of the people. You know, we're not going to be an expert in every area, but you bring the right people together. And I can say that I would want you to lead a task force that would relate to exactly what you're talking about here, relating to our agriculture. You know, there's different areas that people have focused on and spent so much time on in looking out for the interest of other people. And, you know, what I do is in my mind, I have to let you know that I identify people who are experts in those areas that benefits the people, and so trusting that I get in, you know, there's going to be people who I want to be part, because we do have to get a task force in different areas to get that, to disseminate the information, or to support what you're doing here to get that information out. Because the more that people are aware of it, then that's what's going to empower us, and also not to tolerate the injustices and the things that has been happening. Because we have right now a media that is misrepresenting truth or downplaying the harm that a lot of this stuff that we've just discussed is actually doing. They minimize it, and some of the arguments absolutely does not make sense. And
So again, you know, congratulations to you on the already success of your campaign, because you are a voice of the people. And so I just want to say that we're going to continue to do what we can to bring attention and awareness and support your campaign. As you know, over the last 2 years of doing the Golden Road TV show, and committing my efforts to the Sacramento River watershed, which is all the way from Mount Shasta to Sacramento and out to Davis, all the way up to Lake Tahoe, that this region, in collaboration with Sacramento County and the capital, which makes a lot of decisions for California, a lot of people are very optimistic about the positive changes that we can make. And it's really not about Democrat versus Republican versus Independent versus Green Party. This is about people's platform and the changes that we need to make to really fulfill our destiny as a country, as people, and the quality of life, and fulfilling the promise that America was founded on.
Exactly. Really, we're being divided. The people are being divided. And I think, just as you're saying, these things wash away those party lines. These areas apply to all of us. All of us want to have clean air. All of us want to have clean water. All of us want to have healthy food, not want, we need. These are the very things that we need. And so a lot of the differences, that we have per party line, those wedges are being driven by the establishment to keep us focused on those areas where we may have differences, but we have to work towards putting those aside. I can tell you that my platform has been so controversial because I've been speaking the truth, that the registrar in Sacramento County illegally kept me off the ballot. And so through election code violations, with the help of the Sacramento County Superior Court judges, kept my name off the ballot. So that's okay like that, actually. Just, when you do that, you're actually shutting it off.
It gave you choice of storage.
Yeah, I just say ignore on that.
I'll give you this one.
Oh, okay.
You'll have it
All right.
today.
Still going. Sorry.
Still going.
All right. So, and so what people are going to have to do is they're going to have to write my name in. And so you've got choices in District 6, and there's going to be a place that says write in, and you just fill out the oval, and you remember to do this. It's going to be backwards over there, but write in Austin Bennett. And you don't even actually have to spell it correctly. Get as close as you can, but I had 10 variations that I was able to use. And Mike, I want to add to that sort of on a different area also. But what I recognize that even in our court systems, the judicial side of things, the corruption is extraordinarily egregious, and I witnessed that. And the judges who I faced as I was trying to get a writ of mandate, get the registrar ordered to put my name back on the ballot because my name was illegally being kept off the ballot. And what I discovered is that the judges I was facing were appointed by the governors. And think about that. We have governors appointing judges, on the bench. So the judicial side of things should be completely separate from any powers that the governor has or any influence that the governor has. Otherwise, there's a conflict of interest. The only interest that the judicial system should be looking out for is the interest of the people. We, the people. This government belongs to the people, and we're protected by the Constitution, and we're protected by the Republic. And one of the other introductions, the things that I became aware of, was the corruption that's going on in family court, which is extraordinarily egregious. And family court, the court system, the judges in the court are basically, they're taking advantage of spouses, partners, whatever the situation is, and exploiting their financial situation for gain. And if you ever have the opportunity to watch, and I highly recommend it. Now, I have not experienced the divorce court or family court system, but I've interviewed enough people to know that we've got a massive problem there, an egregious situation where judges and lawyers are not behaving in a way in the interest of jurisprudence. And so there's a documentary called Divorce Court, C-O-R-P. I highly recommend people to watch that. Divorce Court is an eye-opener. And so that's one of the things that I want to do there also, is lead a task force. And I have my eye on a couple people who would be excellent to lead that task force, but to audit the family court system, which is absolutely, as I said, separating families, taking advantage. And you know how this works, Mike? I have to share with you. What they do is they find out, what's in the portfolio, what the husband, wife, believe it or not, what the husband has and what the wife has, and they drive that wedge in between them. And by the time it's said and done, their assets have been depleted, and they're fighting and more angry. And so the corruption is egregious even in that system. And so we have corruption everywhere. And that's not an inflammatory statement to say that we need to fix things, but there are good people, there are good citizens who are willing to stand. We just need honest and true representatives who will be a voice for the people And the people, as I said, need to stand behind. We need to reach that critical mass where all of us, as you said, Green Party, Democrats, Republicans, Independent, no matter what, Libertarian, that we're coming together hand in hand as we the people to take back this state and make this state a beautiful state again, a golden state. California is a beautiful state, and it has been being run in the ground. And I really truly mean this when I say that if we specifically hired representatives to destroy this state, they wouldn't have done anything differently, because where the state has gone, our representatives have absolutely abused their offices against the will of the people.
And I know that you said these are not inflammatory remarks. I think that they are inflammatory only for those who have cognitive dissonance, because people will only see what they want to see, and whatever they hold as truth, if anything other is said than that truth, then it becomes inflammatory and challenging. But I think now is the time to challenge people's understanding of these different topics that we're talking about today, and it's time for real change. And when you speak about the corruption of the system, again, I thank you for that, because even recently they did an investigative report, and they found all of the offshore bank accounts of all these world governments and world leaders who had been basically stacking away hundreds of millions of dollars in offshore accounts, and basically how the politicians were robbing the people. And it's also a testimony of how does Vladimir Putin become one of the wealthiest people in the world, because he has his hand in every cookie jar. I think, and again, I don't want to politicize this video too much, but I think we can currently see what's coming out right now, even with the current administration, with major payoffs and major intervention in different types of mergers with AT&T and various businesses. It's not politics for profit. Politics is supposed to represent the people. And again, I just acknowledge you for really helping to be the voice of all those people who don't have the education, the resources, the tenacity, and the compassion to do what you're doing.
You know, one of the first things that they do, just if in the process that I learned, is very early on I got a call from someone telling me that they really liked me, and they told me they were from the same party. And for me, it's not a party thing. Okay, we have to run on a party. And maybe some of the things that aligned more for me, I went with that party. But this person told me they wanted to. They said, we need to get $10 million into your campaign fund, and then invited me to spend time on their yacht, which I didn't do. But the point I'm making is the very first part of everything is they try to see if you can be bought. That's the very first step. And then when they realize that you can't be bought or you won't be bought, and then that's when the intimidation starts to come, or controlled opposition comes in, and they try to discredit you. They try to change the narrative. One of the things they've tried to portray me as, I want to share this with you, as being a pharma puppet, that I work for pharma, you know, and it's stunning to me, some of the things that they will come up with. But even more stunning is some of the things that people will still believe, and you refer to cognitive dissonance. But anything that I have said, and this is why I tell people that that I'm being forthright with you, because the things that I'm bringing out into the light are detrimental to my health, and so I am being a voice for the people. The things that I'm targeting are the things that I believe that people, that I'm certain, I know that people need to be aware about. People, look, we have problems with taxes. I mean, I have a degree in finance, bachelor's of science in finance, and 3 professional financial designations and securities licenses, and I haven't focused on the area of finances because that is secondary right now to our health. I mean, is this state going broke? Is money being squandered? Absolutely, we're going to address it, because that's absolutely happening. And really trying to figure out where all the money's going, that is going to be a challenge in itself. But my focus has not even been so much in the area of my expertise, but it's been more so in the area that people need to know about, and that's the idea that there's been mass poisoning going on. And anything that I have spoken about, when I speak about the vaccines, and I speak about the fluoride in our water, and I speak about the chemtrails, the aerosol spraying, and Monsanto, the genetically modified organisms which are detrimental to our health, The science proves it. So there's nothing that I have said, if someone wants to consider it inflammatory, what I'm saying is that there's no way you could have done your due diligence, because when you do your due diligence, your eyes will open. And I like to believe that that's the type of man I am, that when someone provides evidence for me, and I've shared that before, like when someone comes and says, hey, research 9/11, we know it's being conveyed. I'm not going to go down this path, but whatever's being conveyed in the news, I recommend you research 9/11. And so I do my due diligence, and that's where I base my conclusion, based on science, based on truth, and that's what I ask the people to do, because if, and I know what I'm saying is true, but if you're not certain about it, or you don't want to believe me and you haven't done your due diligence, it's in your interest, because what I speak about is in humanity's interest.
So you're not a cultivator of fake news or politicized propaganda.
If I was, I'd still be in the news industry because I loved it.
Right. And it's interesting because they recently found out that there's a news agency whose name escapes me at the moment, but that has bought a couple hundred news stations, and they basically print up one script that's used for all the reporters in all the towns and counties and states throughout the country who are all reading the same piece of propaganda to paint the picture and to basically brainwash people, and that this is the actual truth.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that you are a supporter of personal investigative journalism and exploration of truth. And in this day of the internet, people can get online and, like I said, do the due diligence and find out what actually is happening.
Right. It's through the live feed, Associated Press, and you get your script. And that's what reporters do. They get their script. Some of the stories, the stories we write. I was writing my stories, but you can get your story just by getting it from the Associated Press. And often there's pressure to use certain stories, which really is creating the narrative. Because right now, the media has been used as a tool, and believe it or not, by this government. And then the government is being controlled by special interest. And so the idea to run for office, for anyone who wants to be a voice for the people, you have to recognize that you're laying your life down for the people. When you choose to speak the truth, your life and situation does come under threat. But I feel that we are in a time of great crisis, and I would rather lay my life down and lose my life doing what is in the best interest of this state, of the people, and our children's future, because otherwise there's not going to be a tomorrow for any of us. It is that bad, and if anyone does their due diligence, they'll recognize that what I have just said is absolutely true.
Well, if we look all the way through history, at artists, at political people like Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy, who have experienced some of the same opposition. If we look at people who were working in the arts and music, like the John Lennons, the Bob Marleys, who all had very mysterious path. And also, even if we look in the holistic health industry, of those people who have actually come up with the root cure and some of the causes of why cancer is so prolific, and they're mysteriously having their houses broken into, being found dead, having different things. And not only that, but on top of the holistic health industry, going all the way back to Nikola Tesla, all the people who are working on the innovations of free energy and basically are doing technologies that could put the monopolization of the power grid out of business and actually give power back to the people.
Right.
And we can see small remnants of these technologies, like they've allowed solar to, right now I've heard that actually Nevada, California is about to reach the 50% solar generation point for the state. But a lot of these technologies have been suppressed, like using electromagnetism to create energy. So again, for some people who don't want to do due diligence and see the truth, these can be extremely inflammatory remarks, especially coming for someone from running for a political office. But again, I'm here with fascination and full support, because you are talking about these issues that people don't want to talk about, and people are trying to run a popularity contest more than a political campaign based on truth and the welfare of their constituency and the health of people.
Right. Well, as I said, when I brought up the idea of chemtrails to a senator, and he said, "Well, what are those?" And he said, "I don't know what they are, so they're not important. Think about that." And that's a representative. And I spoke to someone who's running for governor and a top contender, and I brought up that? And he said, well, I've heard of them, and can anything be? So I'm speaking as I would speak as a member of we the people. I want representatives to represent me. I want representatives to represent the truth. And the priority goes, as I said, I'm a broken record here, but our health. We must protect our health. And because if we allow ourselves to be sickened by a deliberate, constructed effort by this establishment, by special interests, then we're never going to be able to make the changes that we need to in the future. Today, now is the time that we have to address it. And that's, if I can put this plug in, that's why I'm asking the people to share my name, to spread my name through social media, to write in Austin Bennett, and use this plug here, write in Austin Bennett and fill out and blacken the oval, because right now the other representatives who are running against Richard Pan, they cannot contend with him, and they will not be the voice that we need in this government. Right now we have this senator who I'm running against. Now he is the one who authored SB 277, which makes it mandatory for children to be vaccinated in order to have a public and private education. And the Constitution of this state, the California Constitution, it provides that. That's a right that belongs to every child, that is going to school, to get a public or a private education without being forced. That's an unconstitutional law, SB 27, which was written by Richard Pan. And now he also introduced 2 bills. And believe it, I want to share this with you, Mike, but there's 2 bills, and one came under SB 18, and then another one came under a Senate resolution. And I want you to hear this because both of them are the Children's Bill of Rights. And so why would there be 2 bills? Think about that. Why would there be 2 bills that are basically identical? And here's the thing that I noticed, that as SB 18 is going through, the only thing that SB 18 does, when you talk about the Children's Bill of Rights, what it does is it gives this state control over our children. Our children already have a Bill of Rights, and that's under the Constitution. They're already protected. There's no reason to add anything in, but it is a ruse by the state of California to gain control over our children so that they can come into our homes as an act for the Child's Bill of Rights, and to decide that if a parent is not vaccinating, that they're not looking out into the interests of their children, and then they get CPS involved. And so SB 18, I saw something where the people believed that it's dead. But what people weren't aware of is through the resolution that has much less oversight, the exact same bill is dormant right now. It's under the radar screen, so people aren't aware of it. So the point is write one, and people think that it's dead, but there's another one that's going through the resolution process, which, as I said, requires much less oversight, and it's a situation that has been used against the people to be able to get laws passed under our noses. And also, Richard Pan has introduced a new bill, and I don't know if you're probably familiar with this one, and I don't remember the numbers to it, but this new bill requires that anything that we share on social media has to go through the government's fact checker. And if the government fact checker does not align with what we're talking about, say for example, we're talking about genetically modified seeds not being healthy, if the fact checker that belongs to the government, that's of the government, says that is not so, we will be breaking the law by sharing it. What this is an infringement against our First Amendment. And what is happening right now is this government is coming against our First Amendment. There was another bill that was working through, as many of you know, and this was the one so that the fire marshals would visit homeschoolers. That violated the Fourth Amendment, the 13th Amendment, and the 14th Amendment. And then we have laws that are being pushed now that violate the Second Amendment. And the thing that people must recognize, that if we lose the Constitution, if our amendments are violated, if our republic is destroyed, then everything that has made this country wonderful will be gone, because we are moving towards a police state, and that is the truth. And the sooner that people recognize and that we can reach that critical mass, the more effective that we're going to be as a people, because we'll start working together. And again, that would be like even supporting representatives who speak the truth. We can't allow the media to set the narrative for us. We've got to look for ourselves and not yield, as Mike was saying, not yield to cognitive dissonance, where a lot of our beliefs are even self-contradictory, but that we do our due diligence. It's our responsibility to do our due diligence as citizens. Otherwise, our ignorance is going to kill us.
So I know we could talk for a lot longer, but I think, can we give people information of how they can find out more about your campaign, your work, your platform, and if they'd like to contact you or maybe host an event where you could come and speak? How could they do that?
Yeah, you can reach me on my website. You can go to my website at bennettforsenate.org, and that's BENNETT 4 Senate.org, or bennettforcalifornia.com. And my email is austin@bennettforsenate.org. And if you have an event where you want me to come and speak, I would be happy to. And everything that I'm doing, I see myself, because that's what I am, a public servant. And I'm here to serve the interest of the people. And that has been my commitment when I decided to run 2 years ago. And I have my children's future in mind. I have other people's children's future in mind. And that's my commitment, that I will be a voice for the people. I will not yield, and I will not be intimidated by the government or by representatives there. And I don't fall into that category where I want to be in the in group. And I think that people recognize that I would rather speak the truth, even if I was 1 out of 10 people who was speaking the truth and everyone believed that I was not speaking the truth, than being a person who conforms at the cost and of the interest of the people.
And it's really fantastic because, of course, on a grassroots level, more and more people are waking up and dealing with these topics, coming up with solutions and answers. But I kind of see you that you're really kind of the political canary in the coal mine. You're really the harbinger who's there starting to make the changes. And in some ways, not to compare politically, but there have been people in the past who have run political campaigns who have really tried to be the voice of the people. So again, thank you so much. So much time and energy and commitment goes into what you're doing. So I really thank you for that service. And is there any just closing words you'd like to share with people before we finish?
Could if you would, Mike, would you give your full name and title? And I want my friends to know that trusting that Mike will do this, that I will be interviewing Mike. I want you guys to meet Mike. He's an amazing man, and I'm privileged to be here. And thank you for having me. But would you just give a...
Yeah, my name is Michael DiMartino, and you can find me on LinkedIn. But I've been a producer for over 35 years, and over the last 8 years, after working at the University of California and the University of Massachusetts, and doing a lot of events, I have really focused my attention on doing more investigative journalism to bring out a lot of what you've been talking about this afternoon, to help educate and empower people with the information and the truth so that we can make the changes. Because I also have children. One of them is a physician's assistant and actually works in Brooklyn in the emergency ward. And my other daughter works in communications, but I'm also concerned for their health and their safety and for the health of the world, because it's very typical. We say, God bless America, and I'm definitely what I would consider a true American, a true patriot, but I also like to say God bless the world, because the time of the division of people based on race or color or religious beliefs or culturalization or age or gender is really falling away. So I'm actually a 3-year seminarian as an interfaith minister, but I'm just very committed to education and media and trying to help inspire and educate people. Again, continued support and appreciation. And again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Be sure to check out our weekly 2-hour TV show, Golden Road. It's a show dedicated to arts, culture, community building, economic development, health, the environment, peace and justice, and science and tech. And also, over the last 2 years, we've covered over 300 individuals and organizations and businesses throughout the Sacramento River watershed. And we just launched the Source Directory, which is a listing of these people, and it's highly vetted, so you can find people who are actually doing good in the community, and you can find information at www.thesourcedirectory.org.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.